Do you want to learn Ableton Live fast? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Music Production Lab. I'm Danny B, and I'm about to show you how to get started with Ableton Live and how to make a beat in about 20 minutes. You don't need to know anything about Ableton or any music production software because we'll be starting from ground zero. This video will be straight to the point and will be really easy to follow. Even your cat can learn Ableton. I've been producing music for over 15 years and I condensed so much information into only the most useful points to make it as easy as possible for you to learn Ableton Live and to become a music producer. This is what we'll go over: how to set up Ableton, learn about the different sections of the software and how to use them, how to add different sounds, samples, and instruments to make a beat, and how to add effects. Plus, I'll show you some really helpful features along the way. By the end of this video, you will be comfortable in Ableton Live and you'll have all the tools to lay down tracks and to make a song. That's it for the intro, so take off those arm floaties and let's get wet. That was the coffee slurp transition. I learned it in film school. This is what Ableton Live might look like when you first open it. I'm going to hit Tab on my computer keyboard just to switch the view to the arrangement view. First, let's quickly go over some settings to optimize your music making experience. So go up to Options, Preferences, if you're in Windows. If you're on a Mac, you'll click on Live and click Settings. So go to Theme and Colors, and then under Theme, click the drop down and pick a color theme that you like. That's a bit much. That's pretty neat. I personally like the 24 karat because I like to keep it gangsta, but for the purpose of this video, I'll just switch it back to default so that it's easy to see what I'm doing. Next, you'll need to set up your driver type, audio device, and sample rate. So still inside Preferences, click on Audio. For driver type, select ASIO if you're on Windows, or Core Audio if you're on Mac. For audio device, select your audio interface if you have one. On Mac, you can select your audio interface for both the audio input and output devices. For sample rate, 44,100 is great. It sounds good and it's easy on your CPU, but feel free to bump this up if you want, just watch out for lag. And that's it for the settings overview. So let's go ahead and pop the hood and look at the different sections of Ableton Live. First off, I recommend you activate this info box on the bottom left-hand side if it's not already there. It's incredibly helpful when learning Ableton Live. When you hover your cursor over the different sections, the info box will explain what it does. It even explains itself. Whoa. To activate, just hit the question mark on your keyboard or click the little I on Windows or a little triangle if you're on a Mac. There's also this help tool that's sort of like a summarized Ableton manual. To open that, just click View, Help View, and this will show up on the right-hand side. You can click on any category that you want to learn more about and click the back arrow to go back or click the Home button to go back to the home page. It is super duper. Okay, so there are two main views in Ableton. Session View, which is vertically configured, and Arrangement View, which is horizontal. Session View is good for playing with different ideas and loops and jamming, but I think the more traditional Arrangement View is best for beginners to make a song, and I'll focus on Arrangement View for this video. To toggle between the two, just hit Tab on your computer keyboard or use these buttons on the upper right side. On the left is the browser, so this is your library of sounds. It contains different sounds, drums, virtual instruments, and effects, all of these different elements that you can use in a song. You can click on the category you want, and you'll see your options in this window to the right. And you can click on them to hear what they sound like. Just make sure you click on this headphones icon to turn it blue so that you can hear the sound preview. You won't hear my sound previews because of my audio settings. As long as you're hearing your previews, we're good to go. So let's take a step back for a second. The general concept when making a song in Ableton is that you find the sounds and instruments that you want to use from the browser, and then you add them to the right side to put into your song. It's like baking a delicious fruit cake. You grab your favorite fruits and spices from the pantry, you grab your nuts from the pantry, and you chuck it all into the mixing bowl to make the perfect fruit cake. So this section in the middle is the arrangement section. This is essentially the mixing bowl. When you add a sound to the arrangement section, it's called a clip. Clips are what make up a song. A clip can be a single drum hit, a whole drum pattern, a melody, a bass line, pretty much any sound you want. The arrangement section basically becomes a bunch of clips on a musical timeline that goes from left to right. Each row that you see is a track or a layer of sounds. So let's see what this looks like in action. So I'll click to set the playback marker here. I'll hit spacebar to play, and this loop will play. And you'll notice the marker goes from left to right, and it plays any information that it passes through. So we're back to the blank slate here. It's really important to know that there are two types of tracks: audio tracks and MIDI tracks. Audio tracks are used for audio clips or samples. For example, a kick drum sample or a vocal sample would go into an audio track. MIDI tracks are used if you want to use a virtual instrument like a synthesizer or a virtual drum kit, and you want your MIDI controller to play it and record onto the track. Ableton starts by default with 2 MIDI tracks and 2 audio tracks. You can remove the tracks by right-clicking and select Delete. You can add new tracks by right-clicking, Insert Audio Track, Insert MIDI Track, and these commands have shortcuts as well. Let's look at this example song from earlier. This section on the bottom shows information about the clip and track. If you click on an audio clip, and click here, you'll see the audio clip info and settings, like gain and pitch. If you click here, you'll see any effects and devices you put on the track, like reverb or EQ, for example. Looks like we have an EQ here. If you click on a MIDI clip and click here, you'll see the MIDI clip information in the piano roll. If you click here, you'll see any effects on the track and you'll see the virtual instrument on that track. And a really useful shortcut here is Shift plus Tab if you want to switch from the clip view to the device view, or vice versa. Well done, Ableton, well done. And that's it for the general sections of Ableton Live. Before we add some sounds and start on a song, let's take a quick look at the most important buttons on the top so you're not totally confused when we are using them later. This number indicates the speed or BPM of your project. BPM is beats per minute. To change the BPM, you can click it and type the new number, or you can click and drag up or down. Here are some common genres and BPMs that you might see for each to give you an idea in case there's a specific genre you wanted to make later. There's a download link in the description below. This is the time signature. This is the metronome. When it's turned on, it makes a clicking sound to help you keep the beat when the marker is moving. To turn it on and off, just click on it. You can adjust the settings by clicking the down arrow. This is the scale mode button. If you want to make sure you're playing in a certain scale, you can toggle this on. This is the scale root note and the scale name. When working in MIDI on a clip, you can move your notes to be on the scale of choice. Just click on this to turn it on and off. When it's on, you notice the purple here. So the notes with purple are in the scale shown up here. This is the follow button. When this is activated, the screen will follow the marker during playback. This shows the position of the marker. These are the play and stop buttons. These buttons seem really important, but you can just use your spacebar for both play and stop to save yourself some time. This is the record button. It's used to record sounds of the virtual instruments onto MIDI tracks using the MIDI controller or laptop keyboard. These buttons show the loop information. The loop-shaped button will turn the loop function on and off. Okay, that's it for the sections and buttons overview in Ableton Live. Now that you're familiar with the different sections and buttons, let's add some sounds and make a mother beat. Ow! Some people like to start a song with drums. Other people like to start with a melody or a hook. How do you like to start a song? Leave a comment below and let us know. I'm a poet and I don't know it. So let's go ahead and start with drums. We can either add drums by using samples or audio files, or by using MIDI. Let's use audio files for now, and I'll show you how to use MIDI later in the video. Let's start with the kick drum. So we'll find a kick that we like. So go to Drums, and then filter for kick if you're in Ableton 12. When you find a kick you like, drag and drop it onto an audio track. Or if you don't already have an audio track set up, you can drag and drop it into this open space, and a new audio track will be created for you. I love Ableton, I really do. And it's also wise to rename your audio tracks as you begin to use them. So to do that, just right-click on your audio track, go to Rename, and we'll call this one Kick. Let's go ahead and set a loop to make this easier. So to set a loop, just click and drag on the area that you want the loop, right-click, and click Loop Selection. So now you see this gray bar. This indicates the loop region. This yellow button indicates that the loop is turned on. You can add a kick drum at every place you want it, depending on what kind of beat you want to make. Let's create a real simple drum beat for now. So we can copy it, click where we want it to go, and paste it. Paste here, and paste here. Okay, so let's go ahead and listen to this. Okay, so this sounds like a lonely and depressed kick drum that really needs a friend. So let's add a snare, the kick drum's BFF. So we can go back over to the browser, make sure we're on drums. I'm going to deselect the kick, and instead I'm going to click on snare. So let's find a snare that we think would go well with this kick drum. Let's go with this one. Let's drag and drop our snare onto an audio track. A good place for the snare hit would be the second and the fourth beat. So we'll start with that. We'll put one there, we'll put one here, and we'll put one here. So now that we have our kick and our snare, let's give it a listen. So click here, hit spacebar. So we're making some progress here. This is a little slow for my taste, so let's turn up the BPM. So let's go up here. I'm just going to click and drag up to 128, make it a little bit faster. So there are a couple ways to adjust the volume for your tracks and your clips. The first way is to click and drag up on this blue rectangle to increase the volume, or click and drag down to decrease the volume. And then another way is to click on the sample itself. So I'll click on this audio clip, and I'll click on this audio file picture down here, and I can adjust the gain right here. But so far I think the kick drum and snare volume levels are sounding pretty good. Okay, so this is a very boring kick and snare pattern. So let's spice it up a little bit. I can click on the right side of this audio clip and I can drag over to the left to make it shorter. I'm going to copy this a couple times. Okay, much better. Let's throw some hi-hats on this real quick. So we'll go drums. Let's filter the hi-hats. This sounds pretty good. All right, now we've got the hi-hats on. Let's give it a listen. All right, this is not sounding too bad. How's your beat sounding so far? Let me know in the comments below. If you're liking this video so far, like and subscribe for more content just like this. Well, not exactly like this, a little different. Okay, back to our beat. As you're mixing your song, if you want to mute a track, just click on this yellow button to inactivate it. If you want to solo a track or listen to only that one track, click the S. So now we have a fairly tasty drum pattern. Now would be a good time to save our project file. I like to use the collect all and save. This will save all parts of the project, including all the samples that were used in the file, into the same folder. This will save you a ton of headache down the road if you ever wanted to collaborate on a song, or if you might move samples around. So click File, Collect All and Save, and make sure all of these are selected yes. Click OK, and then you would select the folder that you wanted to save your file. So now that we did the collect all and save, we're free. Earlier I promised I'd show you how to use MIDI. I am a man of honor. So let's add another layer of sound using MIDI. We need a bass line. So we'll go back up to the browser and we'll find a sub. So this time I'm going to Sounds, and I'm going to type in sub here. And I'm going to find one that I like. That sounds pretty good. So I'm going to click and drag this onto a MIDI track. Now this virtual instrument that we just chose is mapped to your MIDI controller if you have one. Make sure on your MIDI track that this button is red to indicate that it's armed. If this button isn't red, just click on it to arm the track. So now when you press on a key on your MIDI controller, you should hear it. If you don't have a MIDI controller, you can use your computer keyboard instead. To do that, make sure the keyboard icon up here is yellow. If it's not, just click on it to make it yellow. This diagram shows which keys you can use on your computer keyboard. So now go ahead and come up with a bass line that you like. One of my favorite parts of music production is loading up a sound and then coming up with something. It helps to listen to the other layers on the loop so you can hear how everything sounds together in the mix. So let's make sure that we have our loop set. So we have our loop bar here right where we want it. The loop is activated, so we're good to go. If you want to use the metronome, click these circles up top. It's also helpful and fun to experiment with the parameters on your devices to come up with some creative sounds. To do that, click on the track and then make sure that your device view is selected on the bottom right. Here we can play with the different knobs and settings. It's easy to get lost in this, and that's okay, because sometimes when we get lost is when we truly find ourselves. So we have a distortion here. So I like a little distortion on my sub so that it actually comes through on phones and laptop speakers. Notice how this meter is almost turning red? That means we're clipping, or we're almost clipping, which means we need to turn down the volumes. So I'll go ahead and pull this down a little bit for this whole track. And while I'm at it, I'm going to pull down these volumes for the other tracks as well. Okay, let's come up with something that we like. When you come up with something you like and you're ready to record, set the playback marker where you want it and hit the record button. And then click the spacebar or the record button again to stop recording. So we're ready to go. Okay, perfect. Since we recorded using MIDI, it created a MIDI clip for us. To look at the notes that we just recorded, select that MIDI clip, select the clip view by clicking down here, and these are the notes. If you're not quite happy with a clip that you just created, you can click on the clip and click delete and it's gone. Or just click the undo command, but I think I like mine, so I'm gonna keep it. The undo command will quickly become your best friend. If you don't memorize any other shortcuts, please memorize Control-Z or Command-Z. I probably use it about 100 times every time I fire up Ableton. Wouldn't it be nice if you could hit Control-Z for things in real life? Like, sorry babe, I hit the dog with my car. Control-Z. He's alive! These jokes are terrible. I wish I could just undo them. Okay, so let's get back into this MIDI clip. So once we're here, we can zoom in by clicking here and dragging down or drag up. And we can also zoom in this direction by clicking here and dragging right or drag left. And we can use the mouse wheel to go up and down. While we're on the topic, you can zoom on the arrangement section by clicking here and dragging up and down. You can scroll up and down your tracks by using the mouse wheel, or by clicking and dragging on this guy over here. You can adjust the height of each track by clicking and dragging here. And you can also minimize each track by clicking this triangle. Okay, back to our beat. So this is where you can adjust the MIDI notes that you just recorded. There's a lot of flexibility here. We can move them around by clicking and dragging. We can double click to remove it. We can double click to create a new one. We can make them longer by clicking on the right side and dragging to the right. We can make them smaller. And some people actually like to just draw in all of their MIDI notes because they don't like to record them with the keyboard. So to do that, they would just come back up here. They would click and drag to highlight a section where they want their MIDI clip, right click and click on Insert Empty MIDI Clip. And that creates the MIDI clip. So then they could click there, come down here and just draw in their notes wherever they would like. So I encourage you to play around with both methods, recording them and then drawing them, and find out which one works best for you. Just follow your heart. We can also use the quantize function here to adjust the timing of the notes. To do that, highlight the notes that you want to quantize and then right click and go to quantize. And these have shortcuts as well. And when you do that, it'll snap your notes exactly to the grid. Like let's mess this one up on purpose so we can see it more clearly. So I'll click that, I'll hit Control U and boom, it slides it right onto the grid. So the timing is perfect. But I do want to mention, don't go crazy with this quantize function because sometimes if your timing is too perfect, it might sound robotic and bland. And sometimes things in life are better when they're a little messy. Since you've been so good to me, I created a sheet with really helpful shortcut commands. Download it, print it out, and slap it on a wall in your production lab. I hope it's helpful. And while we're looking at this MIDI clip, we can also change the velocity for each MIDI note by clicking and dragging these lines on the bottom here. We can drag them up or down. Okay, back to our beat. So now we've got drums and a bass line. Let's give it a quick listen. I can taste the delicious fruitcake. And I wanted to mention we can use MIDI to add drums also. Here we used audio clips. Let's do that real quick so that you can see how that works. To use MIDI for drums, go to the browser and find a drum kit that you like. And go to drums, let's find a kit. Let's just use this jazz kit as the example. So we would click and drag this onto a MIDI track or into this empty space to create a new MIDI track. And now this drum kit is mapped to our MIDI keyboard. So as you can see, this track is armed. So when we play our MIDI keyboard, we hear this drum kit. So we can record these new MIDI drums similar to how we recorded the MIDI bass line up here. So I think to really kick this song up a notch, we need to add another layer. It's missing some mids. So what I want to do is add some piano to make it sound more full and satisfying. It's like this fruitcake is missing sugar. So let's add some sugar. So I'm going to go up to sounds. I'm going to type piano into search. I think that'll work. So I'm going to drag and drop this onto a new layer. So this will create a MIDI track for me. So now I'm going to come up with a melody. If I just mirror the bass line, it sounds pretty good, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so let's clean these up a little bit. So we got these velocities a little bit. All right, that sounded real nice. Now I want to add a little bit of ear candy, something in the higher register that really kind of stands out is really like, it's like the cherry or the frosting, you know what I mean? Oh my, that is some delicious fruitcake. I want to show you how to add effects to a track also, just to give you a well-rounded overview of the process. And speaking of effects, I'll be creating a video to explain compression, and I use me getting punched to help explain. It's pretty great. Check that out if you want to learn more. So one change that I think we need is to cut out some of the low frequencies on this piano layer. This will let the low end of that bass track breathe more and it'll sound cleaner. So let's go up to the browser and go to Audio Effects. And the EQ8 is a good equalizer that comes stock with Ableton. So I'll click and drag that onto the track and we see our EQ right here. So I don't want to go into this too much for the sake of time. I'm going to change the filter mode here to a high pass filter. And I'm going to cut out these low ends. So about right there feels like the sweet spot. So let's listen to everything together. Voila, much better. And there it is, you made a delicious beat. Doesn't it feel amazing to create? Yeah! Hopefully you're feeling a lot more comfortable in Ableton Live. And also, I hope you're just feeling happy. If you run into any roadblocks or have any questions on what we looked at today, leave a comment below. Or if there's a specific topic you'd like me to cover, let me know. I'll be working on other videos on Ableton and music production. Check those out if you want to keep learning Ableton Live in music production and you want to add to your repertoire. In the meantime, play around with what you've learned and have fun with it. I promise you, everything that you learned here will eventually become second nature so that you can focus more on the creative process and not so much on how to do things in the software. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Danny B, and this is the Music Production Lab. I'll see you in the next video.